So how do you avoid losing thousands of pounds when you're trying to flip properties? So by flipping, I'm talking about buy, refurbish, and selling a property on over the short term. How the hell can you do it right without losing money? It's an expensive business, property after all, so it's very easy if you get it wrong to lose money. So here's how to avoid it. First and foremost, when you're buying a property, you need to make damn sure that that property that you're buying, the specific type of property in the area that it's in, has strong demand. Without demand, then everything else is pointless. You can talk about a great margin on paper and what the property is going to make you as a profit, but if no one wants to buy it or you have very limited demand, then you're going to struggle. So you need to go to an area that has demand. You need to ascertain that level of demand is there in advance before you put your offer in. So you're speaking to estate agents in the area. You are looking at Rightmove. You're looking at recent properties that have sold, what they went for, how long do they take to sell. So when you look at Rightmove, you can select that sold tab. So if you hit that sold tab when you do a search, you can actually see what has recently sold. And it might only be the asking prices when you search that way, but it will give you a pretty good indication of how quickly those properties sold for. And that tells you a level of demand. So if you're looking in a certain area, you want to see plenty of properties sold in that specific area. So ideally within a quarter of a mile of what you're looking for. So make sure as well the type of property is in demand. So is there strong demand for semi-detached properties or for bungalows or whatever it is that you're looking at buying? Make sure that type of property has strong demand. So you can search by filters on Rightmove. And again, you're speaking to agents to ascertain demand in advance. And then of course, aside from demand, you've got to make damn sure that you have locked in your profit when you buy a property refurbishment project. So as soon as you buy it, you've locked in your profit, not when you come to sell it, hoping that the market's picked up. That can happen and it's great when it does, but it's not a strategy for long-term success. You need to make damn sure that you've locked in your profit from day one, which means you need to buy really well. So buying properties genuinely below market value is absolutely crucial. Now they're the basics, of course. Aside from that, you've got to keep your refurbishment costs down. You've got to make sure you've got good prices on your refurb and that you're finishing that project quickly or within a reasonable time frame, so you're not tying up loads of money for ages. So the speed of refurbishment is also really important. Aside from that, there's just properties that you want to avoid. So if you're buying a certain type of property that has poor demand or there's a problem there that's going to affect the saleability, that's potentially going to be a massive red flag. It's going to cost you loads of money and it's going to make it really hard to sell that property. So what do I mean? What types of properties are going to be best avoided? Now, there's always somebody that's going to want to buy a property that's less in demand, but we don't want just somebody. We need a business whereby we can be assured that there's loads of people lining up wanting to buy that property at any given time. That way we can sell quickly and the business of buying and selling works. You're having to wait ages to sell, it doesn't work. So there's a few properties that I would personally avoid, properties that I've had experience with in the past that have been harder to sell. Properties like non-standard construction properties. If a property is anything other than the standard brick-built property with a tile or slate roof, then it's non-standard. So properties with flat roofs. Flat roofs don't last as long. A lot of lenders, a lot of mortgage lenders don't like them. They become harder to sell. Properties that are steel frame, so properties that are not your standard construction, are a little bit harder to finance, which means in some cases you will have to tell your buyer, yeah, you can buy the property at this price that we've agreed, but you're going to have to use this mortgage lender because no one else wants to lend on this property. As you can imagine, that is potentially alarm bells ringing for many buyers. Not every buyer, but many buyers. So you limit your audience massively when you're looking at those sorts of non-standard construction properties. Properties that have leases that are short. So if you're looking at a property that has a short lease, then it's not typically going to be able to be mortgageable. Again, so check when you're looking at a property that the lease is long enough. So if it's a flat or even if it's a house, some houses can be leasehold, then make sure that you've actually got a long enough lease to be able to get a mortgage. So even if you're a developer, you're buying the property for cash or bridging finance, the short lease won't be a problem for you. But when you come to sell it, then it will be a problem because your buyer is most likely going to be getting a mortgage. And if they can't get a mortgage on it because the lease is too short, that's not great. Now, there are workarounds here. So you can look at actually specifically finding deals to extend. So get an extended lease on there, or even buying the freehold if that's a possibility. You can do all of that, but be careful, because not everyone knows this, but if you're buying a property that's a leasehold property that has a short lease and you want to be able to buy the freehold, you have to own that property for 2 years before you can even apply for that freehold in many cases. Now, there are workarounds. You can work around this. So ask the question to a solicitor in advance to see if there's a workaround. Having the right to assign that freehold from the buyer or from the seller that you're buying the property from to you can be a workaround. Not always possible. And if you're buying at auction, then you won't have the time to be able to do that in advance in most cases. So be careful when you're doing that. So short lease properties, unless there's a workaround, avoid them. Non-standard construction properties, avoid them. And aside from that, my general rule is if I'm buying a property to refurbish it to sell on, I need to make damn sure that when I have done all the work, when I've added the value through the refurbishment, that I'm not left with a problem, left with something that still makes that property quirky, or something is potentially wrong with it for the mass audience. So I want people lining up to buy it. I don't want just someone who might have a liking to the property, even though it's a bit quirky. I want mass appeal. So that means once you've done the work, so the layout works, you don't have a small dinky kitchen or a dinky bathroom that doesn't really flow, and you have rooms in the right places. You don't have odd scenarios where, compared to all the other properties in the area, the layout just doesn't work. So think carefully about that. If you're buying a property and it has zero parking ability and everyone else nearby can park and there's no opportunity for you to put a drive on the front, things like that can be a massive problem. So avoid them. There's a whole bunch of different things to avoid when it comes to property. These are just some of them. Hopefully that's useful in some way for you when you are out there hunting for your next buy to sell project. So hopefully you found this video useful. If so, go ahead, like, subscribe to the channel, and you will see me again